All right, so a little review from yesterday, a little new stuff today. We're creating that smiley face. We're using the layers panel to manage those layers. If you're already aware of what's going on, great, go for it. Otherwise, you're following me step for step. So now is the time you probably want to put your cell phone away, your devices, and make sure that I have your undivided attention. Here we go. So at the bottom of our screen of our layers panel, we have the little plus sign. We're going to click on that plus sign. We're going to create ourselves a new layer. There it is, layer 1. I'm going to call this, we'll start with, we'll say face. F-A-C-E. Create ourselves a second layer. We'll call this eyes. Create another layer. Call this nose. Create another layer. We'll call this mouth. We'll keep it simple, just those 4 layers: face, eyes, nose, and mouth. And again, you do that by clicking on the little plus sign down here at the bottom of your screen. If you're not quite sure where that is, again, here it is at the bottom, little square with a plus sign. All right, now we're going to add those brush strokes accordingly. So on the face layer, I'm going to select the face layer. I'm going to grab my brush. The color doesn't matter. I think my size looks pretty good. If I wanted to change the size, I can right-click on the canvas, and I can adjust the size there. I'm going to go ahead and create the face. I'm going to go ahead and click on eyes. Make that a little smaller. And I just right-click on the canvas to bring that screen up. I'll select the layer nose for the nose. Select the mouth layer for the mouth. There we go. All right, now that we've kind of played with that a little bit, I want to talk about your brushes. But before we do that, I'm going to back up just a little bit. We need to talk about our workspace. I believe right now you guys are using the Essentials workspace. And if you're not sure, let's do this together. We're going to click on Window and Workspace, and then that should tell you what workspace you're working with. And it should say Essentials, right? Workspace Essentials. And if it looks a little weird, guess what? We can reset Essentials, and that'll bring us back to where we were. Okay. And from here, so again, I want to make sure we're all on the same page here. I know you guys are intense in getting that smiley face done, but I need you to kind of pause. Come with me. We're going to click on Window, Workspace. We're under Essentials. We want to reset Essentials. And from here, I want you to go ahead and double-click on Color, double-click on Properties, double-click on Layers. And so all you shouldn't have any panel open. Now, some of you might have some other panel open. I'm going to try to get this to what you might see. Some of you might have this other panel over here open. If you right-click here, you can select Close, and it'll close that column out. But what you should see is color swatches, gradients, patterns, properties, adjustment, libraries, layers, channels, and paths. Does your screen look like mine, is my first question. If it doesn't, get it there. In fact, we love this workspace so much, we want to save it as a new preset. Okay? In order to do that, you might have already seen it. If not, if you had to take a wild guess, where do you think you would go to add a new workspace? What menu item would you click on? Window, right, because we've done it in the past, and when we've gone to Window, there's a workspace option there. So I'm saying this because of this. You're going to get questions that ask you about something on the English certification exam that I might not have covered, but I've covered it loosely. And that's like, what? Covered, but so I don't have enough time in the class to cover everything, but I will loosely cover everything in at least showing you where things are within the menu system. So if at the very least we took a wild guess, oh, we're doing Workspace, well, I know where Workspaces are. It's under Window, Workspace, and oh, guess what? New Workspace. So together, if you're following along with me, and I'm not going too fast here, so I've clicked on Window, Workspace, and now we're going to click New Workspace. It's going to ask us to give it a name. We're going to name this, if you're following along with me, Webster, capital W. W-E-B-S-T-E-R. Because this is my workspace, this is the workspace that I want you to use when we're doing lab and lectures. Why? Because as we're doing lab and lectures, it's important for me to be able to help you, and I can only help you more efficiently if you have the workspace that I'm working with. All right, we're going to click Save. So I did this with another class, which is why I got that message screen. But when you click Save, when you now go to Window in Workspace, you should see that you are working with Webster. Now, please be careful. With any one of these workspaces, if you go in and you delete a workspace, it's gone. So, like, be careful what you're clicking on, right? These buttons will do exactly as it says. All right, so if at any point in time, if we're working and maybe you decided to go off on your own and do your own workspace, and I'm coming over to help, the first thing I'm going to say, okay, reset Webster workspace so I can see what's going on here. You're going to come over to Window, Workspace, reset Webster, and then we're back in working order. All right, last thing for the day, brushes. There are much more options and settings with the brush tool, as you probably could imagine. Like, really, that's it? That's all you can do? No, there's more brushes and there's more options to do that. So that is under the Window panel, brushes. And you'll see there's also a brush settings. When you click on either one of those two, they're going to group them together. And if you're watching my screen, I'm going to pull this off so that the window is by itself. So here's just a little tip for the class, right? It's important that I always do, and then I let you do. So I demonstrate, and then you go and do it yourself. So again, I'm clicking on Window. Here's where all of my panels are. I'm going to open up my brush settings or brushes, doesn't matter, one or the other. And it's probably going to attach it somewhere over here. That's okay. I pulled it off, and now it's free floating. Go ahead and do that yourself if you haven't already done that. So again, you're clicking on Window and Brushes, and then you'll get these two windows paired up together. Window, Brushes. Everybody there? All right, awesome. As I'm looking around, it looks like everybody's there. If you're silent, I'm going to assume that you're there. All right, so from this panel, you can see that there are brushes, and while I said it looks like there's more options, maybe not so much in this screen, but if you go to brush settings, there they are. Change my color real quick so we can see this. All right, so here we have the size, right? So I can change the size. Notice in my preview window, if you're watching my screen, notice my preview window, as I increase the size, so does the preview window. And I can also take a look at the hardness. We talked about that yesterday, right? At 100% hardness, that means there are no blurry edges. And as we reduce the hardness, then the edges get more soft, less defined. Also, notice that there is a spacing. Now, I don't know if you remember from yesterday. I'll delete this stuff here. I don't know if you remember from yesterday, but as I was creating a brush stroke, I think by default you guys are set to 27%, I believe. Is that correct? What's your spacing set at? 27%? 25%? Okay, it was 20%, right? So, but yesterday when I created a brush stroke, they weren't quite smooth, were they? Like there was like these little ridges, right? And that's to do with the spacing. Give me 1 second, please. All right, so again, that spacing is what's affecting that bumps. So if I reduce this spacing, notice that my brush stroke is now much more smoother, right? Other than I have shaky hands and it's not quite smooth. But as I make that brush stroke, it's not the same as if I have spacing set, I get those little clumps. So what's happening is this. It's very much like if you could imagine if you could physically control how your spray can was spraying paints, okay? And it's the spacing in which you're spraying. That's what's happening, right? This brush is almost like a spray can where 1% spacing is saying, okay, I'm going to press, psst, there it goes, right? It's spraying across, right? Versus if I had spacing, then it's, psst, 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 right? So get it? So that spacing is plotting those brush strokes as you go. Why would you change that? Well, you'll probably see that here in a second. Now, also with that, on that same note, I can also change the angle. Of course, I have a circle here, so I can't really see that. However, if I change the roundness, now I can see the rotation of that brush head. I can also flip the brush head on the y-axis or the x-axis. Why would you need to do that? I don't know. I just don't know. At the top, you'll see there's a range of brushes to choose from. We'll dive deeper into this later into the year. But know this, they're there for you to use. So for example, if you're watching my screen, I have this brush 25 selected. I'm going to change the spacing so that we can actually see the brush head. I'll make the size a little bigger. So you'll see there's the brush. Right, and if I click once, there's the brush. If I click and drag, because of the spacing, if I change the spacing again, I get that effect. And I can rotate the angle as well as the roundness. There's also all of these other options. We have scattering, texture, dual brush, color dynamics. All of these options you can drill into to customize the type of brush that you're looking to use. Right, so that's the brushes and brush settings panel. Now, here's the thing. We want to add this to our workspace. Okay, and the reason why I'm doing all of this out of order is because I want you to be familiar with not just the process, but also practice the process, because this is exactly what you'll very well be asked that question on the industry certification exam. All right, so again, you're watching my screen. Kind of pause. I promise you, you'll have time to go back and to play around with this. But you're watching my screen. Now watch, I'm going to take this grouping here, and I want to add that grouping to my below properties, adjustments, and libraries, and right in between layers, channels, and paths. Okay, so right in the middle here, this is where I want to place this new grouping. So I'm going to grab this grouping of panels. I'm going to drag it over here. I see the box. I don't want to see a box. That means I'm going to nest it in there. I want to see a line. You see the difference? Box, line, box, line. I want that line. I'm going to drop it right there. Boom. So now what I see is this configuration. I've got 4 groupings. The first grouping is color swatches, gradients, and patterns. Second grouping is properties, adjustments, libraries. Third grouping is brush settings and brushes. Fourth grouping is layers, channels, and paths. If you haven't done that, do that. Now, just because we placed it there doesn't mean it's going to stay there. Remember, if we were to reset Webster, that's going to go away. Okay, and to demonstrate that, just so that you can see that, don't do this. You can just watch. If I go back to Window, Workspace, reset Webster, brushes and brush settings go away. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to add this grouping to our workspace. So watch my screen. It gets a little tricky here. I swear there used to be a button that would allow you to update, but it's gone. Pretty sure it was there, but for whatever reason, it's gone. Maybe it might be an Illustrator. Neither here nor there. So we're going to go to Workspace, Window Workspace. You're just watching. All you're doing is watching. We're going to do new workspace, and I'm going to call it the same thing I just called it. Webster, capital W, E-B-S-T-E-R. Watch what happens. I'm going to click save. It's going to say, hey, this custom workspace, Webster, already exists. Do you want to replace it? I'm going to say yes. And now, if I ever mess this up, right? Oh, Mr. Webster, I need help. I'm going to come over. I'm going to say, okay, let's reset Webster, and it's going to bring back everything together. And there you'll see the new grouping is there now. Brush settings and brushes. All right, so again, this week, we've gone over the user interface of Photoshop. We've talked about where certain tools are, where the panels are. We've talked about workspaces. We've created our own workspace. We've saved a workspace. We know how to reset a workspace. We've worked with the brush tool. We know how to change the brush tool by either using the color picker, right? We can right-click on the canvas to change the brush, and then we can also go to the brush settings panel to change the brush settings as well from there.